Hey guys, welcome back to our Node.js and Express tutorial series here on Turbo 360. In the previous video, we continued setting up the homepage configuration by filling out this content area over here. We added our images and used the configuration page JSON files to populate this data over here, as well as down here. So hopefully you got all that working. In this video, we're going to continue down the home page and fill out this section with t-shirts. This is going to be a t-shirt shop. That's why it's called the shirt shack. And then, so these are going to be t-shirts that are going to be coming from the content management system of Turbo. So instead of having more configuration files in the JSON pages section, we're going to set up the content management system, or the CMS, for Turbo, which enables us to create a database on the Turbo environment, which we can then input our own data, our own custom data, in this case t-shirts, or we're going to call it shirts, and then interface with that data both in the code and in the admin console of our project. So let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to run the local server, make sure everything still works fine locally. Okay, there we go. And then let's head over to localhost 3000 and just reload, make sure this looks okay. Great, everything here looks good. So let's go back and turn off the server. So again, we're going to use the Turbo Content Management System, which is a great feature on Turbo, which enables us to create a database on our projects and easily add and store data. And the CMS follows a very, very similar schema as or architectural design as a MongoDB. So basically, by learning the CMS system here, you're also learning Mongo and the Mongoose ORM at the same time. So it's kind of like learning, it's kind of like Mongo on training wheels. You can think of it that way. So the first thing we need to do is actually integrate the CMS into our project. So we're extending our project with the Turbo Content Management System. So the way you do that is Turbo, and we extend the project, and we're extending it with the CMS. Now before I run this command, I want you to pay attention to this area over here, this left side over here. It's going to add a couple directories and files. So go ahead and run that, and you'll see over here, you'll see models, controllers, and TMP show up. So for now, what matters the most is the models and then the controllers. So we're basically interfacing with the database. And so around that concept, we have to use models to design the schema of our data types. So if you actually open up the models directory, I'm going to just close all this stuff. Okay, if you open up the models directory, you will see a post.js file, which if you open that up, you're going to see a schema with a handful of attributes that relate to a blog post. So basically, the CMS gives you one model schema just right out of the box, and that's for a blog post. So if you think about a blog post, you'll see that these attributes correspond to a conventional blog. You have an image, a title, the text, author, things like that. And this gives you a good sense of how the schemas are designed in the database, and this is pretty much how it works in the Mongoose ORM as well. This is about a 90% approximation. So this is our post model or slash schema. And then if you open up the controllers, you'll see we have two files, but the most important one is post controller. And this file right here is what handles the CRUD operations, the create, read, update, and delete operations against the post model. So this is really what actually performs the operations on the post. So if we want to fetch a bunch of posts, or we want to find posts, we run the get command on the controller. If we want to get a specific post by unique identifier, then we run the get by ID, which essentially proxies this find by ID on the post model itself. If we want to run this command post, which is not the same as the post model name, this basically means create. We end up creating a blog post, and then put means update. So if we want to create a change and update to an existing post, we run the put, which proxies this right here, find by ID and update, and then delete. So these commands are basically the basic CRUD operations of most database CMS style architectures. and integrations, and we use a controller in this case to run those changes, those database interactions. There's no reason why you couldn't add more to this. In fact, that's pretty typical. But at the very least, these should be implemented. These first 5 should be implemented more or less as is. If you want to create different kinds of queries, like maybe you want to create another one for like get featured blog posts, that should be fine. But you want to maintain what's already in place. Now, of course, we're not running a blog here. We're running a t-shirt store. So we need to create another model and another controller. These are often referred to as resources, by the way. Models and resources sometimes are used interchangeably. And we want to create another resource called shirt with a corresponding controller, which handles the CRUD operations for shirt. So let's go ahead and do that right now. So the way you do that using the Turbo CLI is you do Turbo, and we're creating a resource. So resource, and then the name of the resource, so shirt. And this command will create the model and the controller for you right out of the box. So we have our shirt model and our shirt controller. If you open up the model, you'll see that there is a very, very stripped down schema, only 2 attributes that come right out of the box. So basically it doesn't give us anything other than 2 sort of default attributes. And then the controller is the same thing. It has all the CRUD operations already set up. So we're going to do a little bit of work in both areas. So the shirt in here, in this props object, is where we declare the attributes that define a t-shirt in our system. So if we actually head over back to the UI and take a look at one of these, we're going to have a name, a price, and an image. At a bare minimum, we're going to have that. So those are going to be definite attributes. So let's go with an image. This is going to be a string. The default value is going to be empty string, and we don't want that to be immutable. Immutable means it cannot be changed after creation, so we don't want that. We're going to need a name, of course, and a price. Now, price, of course, is not a string. It should be a number, which means we should set the default value to 0. If we go to the when the user clicks on one of these, it's going to go to a description page for that shirt. So the shirt should at the very least have another attribute called description. Description. That's going to be a string defaulted to empty string. And we're going to also have an array of sub images, so secondary images. So when a visitor clicks on one of these shirts, it's going to go to like a detail page with more images for that particular item. So we want to add that as well. So that's going to be an array of images. And we want to call this an array, of course, which means the default value should be an empty array. Last but not least, we're going to add a slug. And this is sort of a unique identifier. A unique identifier that's separate from the actual ID. So when you insert a new item into the database, it'll give you a unique ID number. But we generally don't want to expose that. We want to minimize exposure to that. So we create a slug, which is kind of a random string that gets created, generated for us. Well, actually, we have to write the code for that. So that's going to happen in the controller. So the controller, if you recall, handles all the CRUD operations. So what we want to do is on the create, which is the post command right here. This is the creation command. We want to generate the slug string, and then we want to apply that to the new shirt. So luckily it's already happening in the post controller. If you head over to post and find the same thing, you'll see over here the slug value is already being attached to the object. So what we want to do is we can just copy this over, and it's right inside this promise return. So we can just do this. And we don't want to reference the title here because the shirt does not have a title property. So keep that in mind, that'll actually crash. We want to use the name instead. So if there's a name, we want to generate a slug version out of it. And this will create a unique string identifier, which we call the slug, and then that will be stored in the database as a unique identifier on the shirt, which does not match the actual database identifier. So in general, you don't want to expose that. That's a shaky practice. Okay, so our shirt model is now organized. I think this will be all we need for this project. We have our controller. We made one minor change on the creation handler. One more thing we need to do is in the controllers index, we need to actually register the new controller. So we simply import it. That's going to be shirt controller. Don't forget over here. And then we have to export it like that using this key value pair. It should be named after the resource itself. So in this case, shirt. And this is how you register a new controller with the CMS. So without this, it won't know, the environment won't know about it. It won't pick it up. Okay, so that takes care of that on the model and the controller side. The last thing we need to do now is head over to the app.js and tell the config that we are now using the CMS. And that's done in line 21. We just have to uncomment this. And this line right here is what establishes the database connection to the CMS. So without this line right here, the CMS wouldn't be connected at all. It's just there would be no database connection. So this establishes the database connection. And so now what that means is we can run it locally and basically make sure nothing crashes. And you'll see here there's a success command callback saying the DB is successfully connected. So if we head over to localhost 3000, everything still works. However, we didn't see any visual differences. Everything looks the same. That's because we don't have any shirts currently in the content management system. So then that begs the question, how do we do that? How do we add shirts? How do we create some shirts in the CMS? So let's go ahead and do that. But before we do, let's throw this up on the staging server to make sure that everything works on staging as well as it does on localhost, so that we know that everything is good on both sides. So I'm going to run the deploy and pause the video while that's going up. Okay, the deployment is now up. Let's take a look at the staging server and make sure everything still works on staging. Okay, looks good. So basically everything looks the same, but now we have the CMS integrated into this project. So then how do we use it? How do we actually use the content management system? Well, if you head over to your Turbo account and click on your account section, and then My Sites over here, click on Sites, you should see your project near the top. So click on Manage, and then this is the admin dashboard for your project. Back when in video one, when we created the project, this is the same page we were on. On the left-hand side, you will see a configuration option. And don't worry about this UI. I'll show you how to make this cleaned up in a later video. But most importantly, look at the left side. We have a new option called CMS. That's because the project, the environment, is aware of the CMS that we integrated into the project. And so if you click on CMS, you'll be taken to the content management system sort of dashboard where you can manage your CMS. So if you look at the upper right corner and click on this drop down over here, you'll see we have two options, one for post and one for shirt. And shirt is the resource we created just now and deployed. So the CMS is picking up that we added a shirt resource, and we can use this to add a actual shirt. And if you click on this right here, add shirt, you'll see that we have fill-in fields for all the attributes that we had defined in the schema. So this is coming from our schema, the image, name, slug, price, description, and images that we defined in our code in the shirt model. And if you see, these are the ones that show up. The reason why we don't see these two is because of this immutable flag. So the immutable means it's hidden from the dashboard. So we should see these 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, show up over here. And here is where we can actually start creating t-shirts. So if you go back to the code, the folder of the project, and open up the t-shirt store project, and then the public directory, and then the IMG folder, you'll see there's another folder here called t-shirts. And basically this is a series of t-shirt images that I prepared beforehand for this video. We actually don't want this inside the project. So if we go back one level and put this on the desktop, we actually want it on the desktop. They shouldn't even be in the project at all, because we want to create the shirts over here in the CMS. So what we're going to do is, I put the shirts folder on my desktop, and what we're going to do is create our first t-shirt using this CMS. So let's go ahead and click on change for image and click on the t-shirts folder, and let's go ahead and use the first t-shirt, shirt 1, and that's this one right here. Okay, and let's just call that Darth Vader. Leave the slug empty, and then the description, this is my Darth Vader design. And leave the images array empty as well for now. We'll update these later. Let's go ahead and create the shirt. Shirt created, and what you'll notice is that if we click out of here, an entry in the table has been created, and here's when it was created, and this is the unique identifier of the entity in the CMS. So if we click on this, it'll show the entry that we just created, and if I reload and go back to the CMS and then click on shirt, it'll show up again. It'll still be there. So this is how you interact with the CMS. Now I want to make a few minor changes here because I forgot a few things. So you'll notice over here on the actual table, only the ID of the shirt shows up, and it's this weird, unique string that's hard to really understand what you're looking at. It's not really a good user experience. And also you may notice the slug has been automatically generated for us because that's how we defined it in the shirt controller in the post right here. So this is automatically created for us. The main thing here is that we don't want the slug to be changeable or really even visible. We just want this to be sort of a hidden field, and we can do that by going back to our schema and telling the CMS that the slug attribute right here is also immutable. So it won't even show up here. That's what we want. However, we do want the name to show up in this table, so it's easier to navigate this table. So the way you do that is you head back here and you say in the name attribute, not the image, excuse me, the name attribute right here, we tell it to display. And this display flag means we want this attribute in particular to show up in the table. And that's what those flags mean. So let's go ahead and redeploy and make sure and confirm that those changes update the CMS properly. So I'm going to go ahead and deploy again. Pause the video. Okay, the deployment is up. So again, these are pure CMS changes, right? So if I go to the staging URL, it's not going to make any difference. It's going to look the same. But if I go back to the CMS now and I reload, so we should reload the CMS and then click on CMS, head back to the shirt resource. Now we see the name showing up right here, and now we know what shirt we're clicking on right there. So we can click on that, and then it will show the name over here, the unique identifier, and the slug value has disappeared because we don't actually want to change that. We want to keep that hidden as well as unique. So here is where the CMS is connected. Let's say we want to change the price. We can just change this to another value and then apply changes, and then it updates, and the CMS is now set to go. Let's add another shirt. So let's say add shirt and shirt 2. And let's say we'll call this love. We'll say this is $10. This is my love design. And we'll leave these images array empty for now. And then go ahead and create the shirt. So now we have the second one and the first one is over here. I'm going to add one more. Dancing. This is my dancing shirt design. Okay, and then we'll go ahead and add that. So now we have 3 shirts in the CMS and they're good to go. And so that's how you add shirts and basically set up the CMS. Now the key question here is how do we use this on local? All right, so if we run the local server, we don't have that data on the CMS locally. And here's how you know. So if you recall, when we did turbo extend CMS, it created 3 directories, models, controllers, and TMP. And the TMP folder is where the local data, CMS data, is stored, one for each resource in the controller. So if we actually look at shirts or posts, really, you'll just see empty files because there is no local data, so it's not synced up. So to sync up the CMS, we have to clear this data out first, and then we need to fetch the data from the CMS. So let's set up that process. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to head back to the routes folder and open up the main.js. And we want to fetch the t-shirts from the CMS for the home page, because if you think about the home page, I'm just going to use localhost for this. These shirts should be coming from the CMS. So what we need to do is query the CMS or the database for the t-shirts currently in the backend. So the way we do that is in the main route, we import the controllers, because remember, the controllers are what handles all the CRUD operations, and we're about to do a read, which is the R in the CRUD. So we're about to do a read, sometimes called a fetch. The controllers right here is this index file right here, which exports, in our case, 2 keys, shirt and post, which is 1 each for each resource. So we want to grab the shirt controller. So the way we do that is we grab the shirt controller, by grabbing the controller's shirt key, like that. If you look at the controller itself, you may notice that this is a class. So it's not just a raw object, it's a class, which means we need to create an instance of this. So we want to do instance, like that. And now we have an instance of this controller, which we can then use to run the queries. So here we're going to do a get. So we can just run this get command. So we do shirt controller and then get. And this will get every shirt in our current CMS backend. A couple things here. This is returning a promise. So this is an asynchronous method, asynchronous function. So we want to tell the callback handler that this is an async function. and then we want to do an async await here, like that. And this represents every shirt in our current CMS backend. You know, an easier way to see this actually is if I do router, I'm going to do another get handler, one just for shirts, because right now it's hard to see what's going on, and I'm just going to do this again for shirts, like that. And then instead of returning a page, I'm just going to return some raw JSON, and then it's going to return shirts like that. So this is another handler path for shirts, which is going to do exactly what we did up here. We fetched all the shirts, and then we're going to return it just as raw JSON. So I can test that right now on localhost by going back to localhost 3000, and this time I can do shirts. And it's going to give me an empty array because we have no shirts in our CMS, right? So that's what I was pointing out a few moments ago. But we do have shirts in the actual backend, the actual hosting environment. So right now the key is we got to sync these two up. We got to get these shirts in our local project. So the way we do that is we need to clear this stuff out. So you can literally just manually clear out these files. But an easier way is to run this reset command, npm run reset, which will do the same thing. So if I do npm run reset, it will clear out these two temp files, which it just did. And so now when we run the query locally, when we run this query locally, the local environment will see that there is no DB backing file here, no collection file. So it will fetch it from the remote and sync up with the remote, and that's how you do that. So we can run the serve right now, and then go back here, and now we have our 3 t-shirts from the CMS that we created over here, and they line up. So these are the same 3 t-shirts we created on the remote CMS, our remote hosting environment. So this time, unlike before, we're actually syncing up our local with the remote instead of the other way, which we were doing with our page configuration files. So we now have data in our local environment. See right here we have our shirts. And so now we can use this query to populate the shirts on our home page. So I already set up the query here. It's really the same exact thing. We could bind that to the data right away, just like that. So now the data key here the data object here has a new key called shirts, which is an array of t-shirts. It's literally this array right here. And so we can loop through the shirts array in the home template and then render each t-shirt instead. So let's set that up. So we go back here and we go to the home template, and we have latest products, which is this area right here. So let's populate this area with our t-shirts. So we have latest products, and it looks like the product item class represents one individual item. So the theme gave us these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of the box. Let's get rid of these 4. Let's get rid of these and leave 1 behind. Just rendered it 4 times. Okay, and then let's go through the array of shirts just like before. So we're just looping through the array of shirts, and then each shirt has a name. So right here is right there. That's where the name should go. And then it also has a price. And for now, let's just make sure that this is working. So here are the names, and they do match up, right? So now let's go ahead and show the image, and that is going to be the image key right here. So let's go ahead and render that over here instead. You may wonder why I'm using 3 curly braces instead of 2 this time. Generally speaking, when you have a URL, a full URL as your string, you want to render that with 3 curly braces. It'll actually work fine with 2, but this is a little bit more stable. It's just better practice to do it this way. So let's go ahead and make sure that that works. And now we have our 3, well, 1, 2, 3, and it just loops back to the first one. So now we have our shirts showing up with our prices and whatnot. So so yeah, so that's it. So I'm going to make a few more tweaks here. This heart and this this heart icon I'm going to get rid of. And instead of add to cart, let's say view details. Let's go with that. There we go. And this is a link right now that goes nowhere. Let's get this text down here uppercase. So the name, so we'll say class text capitalize. That's a bootstrap class, which will just uppercase the string, not uppercase, just the first letters of each word. So I think that just looks a little bit more professional. Okay, and that's it. So now let's go ahead and throw this guy up on the staging environment to make sure that this is working properly on staging as it does on local. So let's go ahead and send that up. So I'm going to turn off the server and do a turbo deploy. And as always, I'm going to pause this while it's going up. Okay, the deployment is up. So now this time when we go to staging, we should see something different. We should see the actual t-shirts from our CMS. And there we are. So let's go back to the CMS on Turbo itself. And here we have our 3 shirts from before. I'm going to add one more. Call this one Love 2. And this will be $10. This is my second Love t-shirt design. And we'll just go with that for now. Okay, and so now we have a 4th one. So now this is automatically updating the CMS. So if I go back here, now you'll see all 4 of them show up. You see Love 2, Darth Vader, Dancing, Love, and it rotates back. So the CMS automatically updates. If we want to make a change, let's say we change our mind on the price of Dancing and we want to make that $20. We can apply the changes, and now Dancing, as the t-shirt design, here it is. It's $10 here, but when I reload, because now the data has been updated, it is now $20. And that's how the CMS works. So, and then if I hover over this, view details, so forth and so on. And this is how you interface with the CMS. And yeah, that's it. So you can extend this to as many data objects as you want. We will be adding another one soon when a visitor creates an order that'll add another object to our CMS data type called order, where we can look up the details of a user order. So, so yeah, hopefully you got all that working. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.